So, how are you and how have you been since we last met?
Good. Super curious. I did talk to my
You
I talked to my grandma and I talked to my aunt.
you did.
I did.
Okay.
And
See how excited I'm getting?
no, 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 for real. So
Okay.
first, I talked to my grandma,
Mhm.
and she was like, "Wow, that is a really good question." I'm like, "That's the same thing I had," and we were both like, "How could we have not thought or considered that to even be a thing?" Anyway, we get past that, and she says not that she could remember. She said, 9 times out of 10, my aunt was the one that was taking care of me. She was the only one mentally and emotionally stable enough to even be bothered with me at that time because of
Really?
it. Right, between my mom and my grandma, and what that everything that transpired with, concerning my dad, with between them, my aunt was, I guess, the only one that could gain the strength to take care of me.
How long was that for?
I don't know. I don't know. I could imagine a while, a good
Okay.
couple years maybe.
Oh, okay.
Um, and my grandma said that from what she could remember, I didn't have time to um, really feel the feels of it because my aunt always had me distracted doing something. She said she did notice that, like, if the door was to open, like, because I was living with him for a while, and then when I moved back in with my grandma, she said she did notice, like, when the door would open, I would, like, check to see, and I was probably, like, checking to see if it was my dad or something. But she said other than that, she didn't notice any um, like shift in behavior. My aunt kind of pretty much said the same thing. Um, she said she's sure that there was some, you know, field or traumas, but in the way that I acted, she can't say that she remembers any shift in how I acted. Um, so she pretty much agreed with my grandma. I just figured that maybe how I acted transpired more so once I started getting into boys when I was younger. And then it started to like come out, and I just didn't realize what was going on. That's just my thoughts from what they said and knowing from what I remember growing up. Obviously, I don't remember that far, so they would have to fill that gap. But from what I remember and then what I hear them say, that's just what I could assume is that maybe it just I acted out in my own way as I got older.
Okay. Okay. And you said you did talk to your mom as well?
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't talk to your
No.
mom. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you
I I would like to, um, but again, with what I talked to her about before, about me not bringing him up to her ever again, then that kind of closes that door. So
But is it the same if you're wanting to know about your childhood, even if it's not bringing up him?
I feel like it's kind of like a really, really fine line.
Like a fine line?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I maybe not, but maybe like because like I feel like it's so fine, and I don't know.
And that makes sense. So, do you mind if I ask a couple
Yeah,
questions?
yeah.
Okay. Just so I can fill in the blanks. So, your aunt is your maternal aunt?
Yes.
Mom's sister?
Yes.
Okay.
And grandma same.
Same. Okay. Were you aware that your aunt took care of you during that time? Because you said your grandma and
little
mom
bit.
weren't kind of mentally
Yeah,
able
not necessarily. I mean, recently I found out that my aunt was that one before this previous conversation. But growing up, no, I didn't know that.
Okay.
Even when I found out about my dad and all the trauma that came with that. I didn't know that until
Okay.
more recently than not, and my grandma told me
Okay. So,
that.
and you're not sure, like, how long your aunt took care of you, and did you live with her at that time?
Yeah, I think my aunt, my grandma, and my mom and my uncle all lived in the same house.
Oh, I see. Okay. That makes
Because
more
they were all
sense.
still kids, really.
All right. So they all lived together, but
Hmm.
your aunt kind of took on more of the maternal
Exactly.
responsibilities. Okay. So it was grandmom, mom, aunt, and who else?
My uncle.
All lived together. And then you mentioned you lived with your dad for a while.
Yeah, so my mom and my dad had their own apartment. So they left they were living at my grandma's house. They left her house to get their own place.
Okay.
Um and I lived with both of them in their place.
Do you know how old you were at that time?
Um I don't know. Um I'm pretty sure I was already born, still infant, but already born. I don't know. Like, I don't know if my mom went into labor in her own place with my dad, or if I was already born and then they left.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I don't really know that time frame, but I do know I lived there for, I don't know, I would say at least a year, probably
Okay.
a year ish.
Right. So you lived with him for about a year.
Roughly, yeah.
Were you living with him? No. So you weren't living with him when he passed away.
No, I think I
You had already
think
moved back.
I think my mom took me and moved back in with my grandma before he passed.
Okay.
And then he was back and forth between his, well, their apartment and my grandma's place.
Okay. So they moved back with grandma.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that you said, like, after you had lived with your dad, so we'll say you're about a year old,
Mm-hmm.
a little over maybe a year old at that time, and whenever the door would open or close, you would look, like maybe looking for your dad.
Right.
But he was still kind of in your life. Like you would still see him, I guess.
I guess that happened after he had passed, I'm assuming.
Oh,
So once
okay. I misunderstood.
yeah, like once he had passed, and I had spent, I guess, a little bit of time without seeing him, is when I would see, I guess, the door opening, and then I'm like checking to see if it's dad, coming through the door.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that was after he passed on.
Yes, I'm assuming.
Okay. So then that tells you right there that you were aware on some level.
On some level, right?
Waiting for him to come home or waiting for him, to come see you, or some connection there was broken and you knew that on some level, which is very interesting at such a young age.
Right. My aunt, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but she's a foster mom, and she has to go through some like training and stuff, and educational stuff about kids and trauma and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she did learn that, with the question that I asked her, she was like, she does know that kids do build a bond and a connection inside of the belly, which I kind of knew, but not to the depth of the way she was explaining it.
Yeah.
So there is a connection from hearing the voice, that familiar voice, to when you come out and you're still hearing that voice, like you make that connection to your parents and to the people that are around you. So to not have that anymore, it's like, okay, what happened? You start to wonder,
it's definitely a loss without even
Right,
knowing.
exactly.
You know, you don't know how to articulate that
Right.
at that age. Yeah. And two, you know, I mean, with babies, they can sense, like, by a smell, you know, sound, and touch, and not necessarily, you know, oh, where did they go, but
Right.
you know, more on the level like you're talking.
Mm.
So there was a loss there that you couldn't articulate and didn't know what that was or how to deal with it. And it's interesting that you said like your aunt would distract you. So she was keeping you occupied to keep you from feeling that. So those feelings kind of gotten pushed aside, and she had, I'm sure, all good intentions.
Right, right.
You know, she probably just didn't want you to be sad and to be hurt and all
Right.
of that. So then you said it kind of affected you once you got into boys. So how old were you then when that happened? If you can remember.
I think more seriously, like 13, 14.
Okay, but even before that, did you have interest in boys before that?
Yes, but I feel like it was kind of, I don't want to say petty, um, but I kind of, is it vaguely or vividly? I always get them mixed up when you barely remember.
Vague is barely.
Okay, I always mix them
like
up. I never
very
remember.
clearly.
Okay, so I vaguely remember being very young, and it was, I think it might have been fourth grade, so whatever age that is, like fourth grade. It was definitely elementary school.
Okay.
And there was this guy that I quote unquote liked, but I I barely remember anything. Like I don't know if he even knew or if I just was in my field. You know what I mean? I barely remember it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember it being elementary school for sure.
Okay.
And me just having like a little crush.
Okay. And I don't think that's anything too abnormal or abnormal. Because I mean, I'm thinking about other kids and like they might like a boy, even if they don't know what that means.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Oh, he's cute.
Right.
They might act silly around him,
Mm.
and I can see that around that age.
Mm.
But it wasn't anything that you acted on or
Not that
sought
I can
out,
remember.
nothing like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think once I got to like preteen, teenage years is when, actually it was more, it might have been more like 12, not
12.
13. Yeah, it was probably more like 12.
All right. So what changed at that age? Like what did that look like for you?
I'm trying to remember. It's just a long time ago. I kind of just remember feeling kind of not good enough, but like excited when I would find out someone would like me, and regardless of whether I had any real interest in them prior, them liking me made me happy, and I would typically date them because of that. Or date because super childish.
Right.
But, you know what I mean.
And it felt good when they liked you.
Right. Like, and it's crazy because I said this a while ago, like, looking back, out of all the people that I've dated, a very teeny percentage of them I was even like attracted to or would seek out myself. You know what I mean? Everybody else was just like, if I'm looking back now, I'm like, well, like not what was I thinking, but like I wouldn't have never chose that for me, you know, but simply because they like me, I'm like, all right, bet, cool, you know,
Okay,
like,
so it more like, well, Let's see. All right. So
Like the qualification to date me is you like me. you, you know,
okay.
like I didn't have a standard really. Like I knew what I liked, kind of, but not to the extent to actually stand on it when it came to men wanting to be with me, if that makes sense.
Okay. So you weren't seeking out what you liked.
Yeah, I wasn't standing on like I knew that I liked XYZ, but if someone were to be like, okay, I like you, and they're far from that, it was just like, all right, well, whatever, they like me, so
You would
let's see.
settle
I was,
regardless.
yeah, exactly.
So you would settle just because you didn't want to be alone?
That's probably part of it.
And what would the other part be?
Just wanted to see the kind of love that I could get from that person.
Hmm.
Like if they like me, then regardless of whether I actually like them, maybe I could grow into the life because of how much they like me. Like just stupid stuff. It's a really crazy way of thinking.
Now, are you just now realizing this, or had you known this all along?
Oh no, for sure not all along. I
Okay.
just when I started thinking about just the choices that I've made in
Mhm.
men in life, I started to really think about that kind of stuff. Like,
Okay.
why was I just dating anybody just to be doing it
Okay.
and not wanting to be alone, wanting to feel what kind of love I could get from that person. Um, I think were the main ones.
So at the age of 12, why did you not feel good enough?
Um, I'm not. I don't think I liked me. Like
Okay.
I, I think I always kind of felt like the oddball out in every group or setting that I was in. So honestly, even when it came to my siblings, I felt like the odd one out. When it came to my friends that were, my neighbors, I felt like the odd one out. Um, in school, with groups of friends that I would have, I would always feel like that. Like I always felt like that.
I wonder why.
I don't know. Like I think as far as for my siblings, I
Mhm.
would say just because I felt something now that I know it was my dad and that we didn't have that whole mother, both of our parents being the same, I think that's what I was feeling and just didn't
Ah.
understand it. So I think
Okay.
that was the odd man out for that.
All right.
Um, my neighbors, um, out of, I had three really, really close friends um, growing up, and two, actually, it was kind of like three, four, whatever.
Excuse me.
Most of the people that I lived around were white. I was the, I mean, one of my friends that I had, Megan, um, she was black, but everybody else, like my next door neighbor who I hung out with all the time, she was white. The neighbor
Okay.
across the street I hung out with all the time, she was white. When I got together, I was always like the oddball out. I used to go
Okay.
to church. I think I went maybe once or twice. I probably went once to my next door neighbor's church, um, and I didn't understand really religion at that time, or I thought everybody kind of believed in the same thing, same
Mhm.
God. I realized very quickly that that was not the case when I went to her church. She was Catholic. I didn't know what
Oh
even
yeah.
that was or what that meant. But I was like, why is this so different? Like, why do they keep standing up and sitting down? And how do they know what to say? And I had so many questions. I was the only black person in there, so I definitely felt like the
Right,
oddball out. So
definitely, yeah.
just different things like that, like may always for a friend group, really kind of made me feel like the oddball out. Like I always felt like I was too black for the white people and too white for the black people. So I always felt like a lot of the people that I did end up getting close with were Hispanic.
Okay.
Eventually, like my best friend in high school was Hispanic. Most of the people that I ended up, getting close to outside of Megan, um, the lady who, or the girl who lived down the street from me, outside of that, it was pretty much Hispanic people that I was around. And
you,
then
you said two black for the white people?
yeah, two black for
Two
the white,
for the
right?
white people.
Exactly.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I got that right. It's like when you say, I don't not want to,
Yeah.
do not want to go. And
Yeah,
like,
you're like, wait,
what do you mean?
hold on, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I got that. Okay. Okay.
So that was the friends,
Okay.
at least in my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
In school, at least around that age, I'm not really sure. Like I felt like the group that I was in, like I was in it, but they were okay with my absence. That's how I felt. Nobody actually said anything like that, or no. I don't think, to be honest, looking back, I'm not even sure anybody did anything necessarily, but just the fact of that, like, if I would walk into the class and already see them talking, I'm like, dang, yo, like they started talking without me being there. Like they're friends too. You know what I mean? Looking back now, but in that time, I'm just like,
So
and
that
they're
was
okay with. So I felt odd. Then
insecure, probably.
and insecure, super insecure all the
Yeah.
time.
Okay.
Yeah. So just different. Like I always just felt like I didn't belong, and I had to make myself kind of belong in these groups, or try to anyway.
Did you just say I always felt like I didn't belong? Is that what you
Yes.
said? Okay. All right.
I have to think about it for a second. Like that.
Then it makes complete sense, or at least I think it makes sense, why at the age of 12, if someone liked you, a boy, because you're already missing out on your fatherly figure, you knowing that from, day to day to day to day, and he's not in your life, not understanding probably why, what happened. And what's interesting is a lot of times kids will blame themselves. Oh, I must not be good enough. No one loves me. I've done something wrong, and that's why my dad isn't in my life, or whatever that may look like. And so you see your siblings have the same parents. You no longer have your dad. And then you feel out of, like you said, like the oddball out within your friend groups or in church.
But even at that time, I didn't even know that.
Right, but this is what.
Now, oh yeah, internally.
Right, now we can look back and see, like, oh, this is what is happening. This is what has brought you to this point where you're age 12 and the first boy or any boy that likes you, regardless. Okay, it's that sense of belonging. Someone likes me. I'm, I feel special. They're giving me what I'm missing, or what I think I'm missing.
Right.
And at the age of 12, you don't know how else to fill that void. But, oh, this boy likes me. That feels good.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel special and loved and whatever, So, looking back now, do you see how that all kind of played out and brought you to this point when you were 12?
Oh, yeah. Like, it makes more sense now that I have more pieces and a better understanding.
Yeah. I think it's really helpful and important to really understand, like, one's childhood and their journey, because it helps us to understand the factors that shaped our life or the things we were missing out on that shaped us and why we did some of the things that we've done and why we moved in certain directions, it just makes a lot of sense when you can, like you said, put all those pieces together and go, oh, okay. Now, had you known all of this at the time, you could have, you know, and I'm not saying you should have,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, if we looked back in our life, we could be like, what are you doing? This, you know, we could say that to our younger
Right.
self, but you know, obviously we don't have that, you know, we can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, wow, if I would have just known at that time, if she, that little girl, would have known what was going on, you know, there was, you know, so much that you could have taught her and helped her
Mhm.
through. But obviously, you know, that's not the case. We have
Right.
to go through stuff, you know, and as we grow and we learn more about ourselves, and then we understand, and then we have more forgiveness for self, or just understanding as to, like, okay, this is how I ended up here.
Right.
You know, and you know, and just being able to understand all of that, it makes, I think, a big difference, you know, getting to know yourself on a deeper level. And that helps to shape, you know, your relationship with other people now, and your relationship with your daughter, and
Right.
you know, so yeah, this is all very good information,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to kind of be able to reflect on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to ask you too, like with your aunt, are you still in her life?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is she someone that you would want to kind of get more information to fill in the blanks if you're not comfortable, you know, talking to mom about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, you know, sometimes we just want to know, what was I like as a kid?
Right.
You know, and you know, you can look back at pictures and you know, you see this picture, but it's like, who was that kid? You know, what was going on in her mind and in her life at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that you can, you know, have your aunt, you know, if you're comfortable and you want that information.
Mm-hmm.
And then that'll help, I think, too, to again fill in those blanks and be able to look at, like, oh, here's me getting to know me, not just the adult me, but the child me.
Right.
You know, the younger version of myself. So yeah. And it's interesting because not a lot of people, you know, have opportunity or still have relationships with family members where they can get that information. You know, so you have the opportunity to do that
Right.
for yourself. And you know, the questions that you may have had for your dad, you won't get those answers. But you can find out more about your own self.
Right.
And then you can pass that information along to your daughter, you know, if it's information that she needs to know.
Right.
You know, like, oh, you know, when mommy was 7 or when mommy was 4 or whatever,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
and help her to get to know you on a deeper level.
Mm.
That way, as she gets older, she has more of an understanding of, like, where she comes from.
Right.
You know, if that makes
And
sense.
hopefully keep from the same mistakes that I made.
Yeah, but kids are gonna make them.
They are, absolutely. But hopefully it could
Yeah.
at least, you know, steer just a little bit.
Yeah, like,
you know?
let's not do this. But
Right.
also too, as she gets older, you're going to be able to, based on everything you've gone through, you'll be able to see the signs. Like, if she
Yes.
starts heading in a different direction, you can be like, whoa, what's
Yeah,
going
right.
on?
Right.
Why are we all of a sudden into boys? Or,
Yeah.
you know, what's going on, you know, with your self-esteem, and trying to put yourself in her shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more you understand about yourself and you can kind of relate to your younger self, will help you to be able to relate to your daughter as she
Yeah.
goes through different stages in her life.
Yeah, I agree.
So how does it feel right now, just with everything that we've just kind of talked about and uncovered?
A lot of it I said for the first time, like out loud. With me feeling like the oddball out, even in my, you know, with my siblings and
Mm-hmm.
you know my neighbor in school. Like I kind of knew it, but I'm not sure I've ever said it. You know.
How does it feel now, having said that?
I'm glad I'm just gaining understanding now of, you know, where I was and
Mm-hmm.
you know why I was making the choices that I was making.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm. So Where would you like to start?
I feel like right out the gate with Jordan, I kind of, because of my decisions, I kind of already opened that door for like unhealthiness.
Okay.
You know, from all aspects, really. From where I was in my own life, just me by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Then having her, not even being married. I wasn't even in a relationship, you know. So that um, me like kicking her dad to the side, like didn't not even telling him, and bringing my ex into the picture,
Mm-hmm.
and not having her actual dad there when she was born, having my ex there instead. Um, then really realizing how depressed I actually was, um, and the dark place that I was in, and not being there for her the way that I should have been. Just kind of letting her be, and me just in my own little dark bubble, just wanting to be there alone. Like, not that I didn't love her or anything like that, because I absolutely did, but
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't be the mom that I should have been, like, not even close. Okay. I couldn't even be who I needed to be for me, let alone, do for her how I was supposed to.
What was going on then that you couldn't be the mom you wanted to be?
Just that was when I was realizing, just me existing and not having a purpose, and me not loving myself, all that, just it began to get so heavy on me, and I just kept putting myself in this dark place, in this dark hole, and the more that I realized those things, the further down I would go. And I couldn't get out, and I was just sitting in it, um, for a long time. And she caught that, you know what I mean, for me not being there the way I needed to be, or the way I should have been, you know.
Okay.
Like, even like now, I just got her a tutor because she's struggling in school. I take full responsibility for that, because when she should have been learning the things that she's struggling with, um, or the foundation, I was supposed to give her that foundation before she got to school. I wasn't doing that. Why? Because I was worried about myself. I was in my own dark place that I didn't even have time or the push even to be able to tend to her and teach her, and have the patience to teach her the things that she needed to know before going into school. So now she's struggling in school, and I feel responsible for it. I couldn't I couldn't see this as the same thing that I realized with my dad, is like I couldn't see past my darkness even for her, just like he couldn't with me, I couldn't see past it to where it's like, I can kick that to the side to make sure she's okay, to make sure I was doing the bare minimum, feeding her, bathing her, you know telling her I love her, and that's about it. Anything extra, I wasn't doing that. And even though teaching her isn't extra, to me that was extra. She didn't need that to be alive,
How does it feel now, having said that?
It's hard, just because I want to be the best mom. Like, she deserves it, and because, like, as a mom, you're supposed to put yourself second. Your child comes first. you know, you both are sick at the same time, you figure it out, you put your sickness to the side and you make sure your baby's okay, you know, that kind of stuff. Like, if it's between your daughter eating or you eating, guess what, it's going to be your kid. Like, that's what you do as a parent. And in that place that I was, I didn't have the strength to do that. I didn't have the strength to put what she needed first and put my darkness to the side. I couldn't. I just couldn't. Okay. And it looking back now, it's like, it sucks, but even I would not ever get there again. But even if I got there again, I'm not confident I could still do it. You know, like, that place was rough, and I'm not sure that anything would have been able to change that for me, to the point where it's like, you know, I'm so depressed and so dark right now, but you know what, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna make sure, you know, I do X, Y, and Z with my daughter. I can't see that being a thing.
How long did that depression last to that degree?
I don't even know.
Like, from what age to what age was she?
To be honest, I think it started before her, but to the depth of, like, me just not wanting to really do too much of anything. To be honest, I'm not even really sure. Like, that, I could ask my mom about, because she was seeing all of it. So I could ask my mom about it, but it's really, I'm not even sure. You know, I snapped on her a couple of times because I was so just, like, I remember one day we were going to the Wawa, and she had said something, it triggered me. I don't know what it was. She said something about how, you know, I am because of how I'm depressed, and I snap, and I'm like, how do you think I feel? Like, I'm the one living in it. Like, you're catching how I'm feeling, or me not being, you know, present, or me, you know, being irritable or whatever. But how do you think I'm in it? Like, how do you think I lost it? Like, I'd never snapped like that on my mom before. Like, I really lost it, and it's just, it was a good while. I Even when I started, like I said last session, like, even when I started therapy, like, I was still there. You know what I mean? I had to do, because I kept feeling like I was digging deeper, because I was realizing things that, like, I had a set of things that I knew I needed to work on, and then with therapy, I had so much more that I started to realize. Once I started doing the work, I started realizing more that I needed to work on. So it dug me deeper first, before I started to come out of that. But I don't know that time frame, to be honest. I don't know. Like I said, I could ask my mom, like, if she could pinpoint how long that lasted, but it's really just a blur, kind of, as far as time.
And were you not taking care of your daughter the way that you would have liked, should have, and wanted to, because you didn't want to take care of her, or because you couldn't take care of her?
No, I couldn't. Like,
That's the difference. There's a difference between, I don't want this responsibility, I'm young and reckless and want to just go out and do my own thing, and who cares about the kid, I'm going to leave her with my mom or whoever will watch her. That's a much different way of being than you having been, you know, in such a deep, dark depression and despair that you could only give her the bare minimum, you know. And it wasn't because you didn't love her, it was because you couldn't see past the darkness to feel that love for her. It was blocking you. Yeah. So it wasn't that it wasn't there, it was surely there, but something was in the way, which was your depression, the darkness, the despair, all of that. And so, you know, my question to you would then be, is there room for forgiveness for yourself in not being able to provide your daughter what she needed? And you still have plenty of time to give her what she needs. But is there room for forgiveness within you? For you to be able to forgive yourself?
It has to be. I just, it's hard because like I said with the example with school, like I'm seeing the fruit of me not doing what I should have done. You know what I mean?
Because
so
you
it makes
couldn't.
it hard.
Right.
Right, but it's still, now it's like we got to work twice as hard because I dropped the ball. So it's like I want to forgive myself. I don't know how to.
Well, I think some of it is reminding yourself that, like, now that you're coming out of that darkness, you're doing the things for your daughter that you're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
That you're making sure she has everything she needs now. It's never too late to do that.
Right.
And so, give yourself some grace for the things that you are doing as you are healing through your own trauma. And you can't give what you don't have.
Right.
And especially if you didn't have that strong foundation growing up, and then you get into boys, and then you have a child, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. You're not necessarily mentally equipped, because it's the biggest responsibility of our lives when you have a child. And you don't realize all of that. And if you were depressed before you got pregnant, you were even more depressed after having her, likely having postpartum depression, along with having to deal with everything that you've gone through in your life. You're not going to be the mom you would have wanted to be. But it's not because you didn't want to take care of your child. It wasn't because you didn't love her. It wasn't any of that. It was you were not equipped to handle everything at that time. But now that you're coming out of that, you can work on that forgiveness by doing all of the right things now. Like, maybe I shouldn't say right things, but doing the things that you feel are best for her and for you. And you're taking care of yourself. You're getting, your therapy. You're working on the healing process. You're, you have this like relationship with God, and working through, forgiveness of your own dad. And so, like, you're doing all of these things, which do take time. It's not going to happen overnight. But you have to give yourself some grace for that. Like, yes, understand I didn't like this about myself. I wasn't doing what I wanted to be doing or should have been doing or whatever. Okay, that's fine. You can feel that way, but don't get stuck there.
Yeah.
Because you have to look at, what am I doing for my child now? What am I doing for myself now? And giving her all of the things that she needs. Because if you stay stuck in that dark place, it's just going to prolong the healing process for both of you.
Yeah. I said for a long time that I for years, I never wanted her to have to heal from me. And I don't know how realistic that is, but whatever, I still feel that way. Realistic or not.
There's no such thing as a perfect parent. You could do all the quote unquote right things, and your child may still have some kind of,
something
delay in school, some kind of, issue, insecurities, what have you. So you just do the best you can.
Yeah.
With what you know at the time, and what you knew at that time is much different than what you know at this time.
Right. Very different.
So it's about grace.
Yeah.
And forgiveness, as we've talked about before, it's not an absolute. It's maybe I can forgive myself for this particular aspect of my daughter's life, but maybe I'm not ready to forgive myself for these things yet. Or, maybe I'm not ready to ask God for forgiveness. You know, so it's a process, little by little.
Yeah.
So with our session today, we kind of took it back to the beginning and just highlighted some key points in your life growing up, and kind of to help see like where that all of that took you, and to some not good places, to some dark places. But it's also given you the opportunity to get into therapy, to work on yourself, to, you know, have a connection with God, and to be able to change your life. And you're actively working on doing that. So that is something that you should, you know, remind yourself of.
Yeah.
And again, forgiveness is a process, and which takes time. So what was your takeaway from all of that?
Which part?
Any of it. When you leave here today and you're driving home or driving to work and you're like, like what do you think that was for you?
Start chipping away at the pieces of me that I wasn't happy with, and that I need to forgive, concerning Jordan being her mom, even just me and the decisions that I made as a kid, because I was broken and didn't understand why I was moving the way I was moving. Just start chipping away at that and realizing what caused that, and not validating it, but understanding why I did what I did, and just forgiving it, you know, because I'm not that person. I'm not that same person anymore. I have an understanding now, so I can choose different. What do they say? You can do different when you know different, or something like that. You can.
That sounds
something like that. Yeah, like I can move differently because I have a better understanding now of certain things. You know.
Absolutely. So between now and the next time we meet, what do you want to work on?
I wanna. What was I supposed to ask? I was supposed to ask my mom something.
Well, you can ask your mom, like, what was I like as a child?
I think it was. How long? Because I was living with her at the time.
Oh, that's right.
How long does she think that I was in that dark place and depressed and all that?
Yes.
All that stuff.
How long was she? But then too, if you get the opportunity to talk to your aunt about, you know, some of just some of those questions you might have.
Okay.
She might be more willing to answer those than probably your mom will.
Oh no, yeah, for sure.
Okay. So you have some more work to do.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm gonna grab